Good morning. Well, it's Advent time, and as you can see, my study is turning into Santa's workshop. I suspect the Advent themes of waiting and hoping grew out of women's and men's experience of gestation and birth. The 9 months of gestation, though, was condensed to some 5 weeks before Christmas, to fit with a liturgical calendar. A wanted pregnancy brings with it a nest of feelings in that waiting period. Feelings of joys and hopes and fears. Not that the gestation of baby Jesus was always wanted, for it's clear from both the Luke and Matthew texts and the innuendo in Luke's and Matthew's genealogy that Jesus' parentage was uncertain and illegitimate. But then with an angelic dream, Matthew's version, the child is made legitimate by Joseph's adopting him. Many of us have experienced that nest of feelings around birth. Preparation and perinatal or prenatal health checks, of hopes we have for the child and fears of what could dash them, of worries about birthing and the wonder of seeing this new life take its first breath, of what the present can sustain and the future might hold. All these feelings, whether they are realistic or not, coalesce around the birth of a child. It's a special time. Yet Advent was expanded beyond simply a gestation and a birth. Into the wrap comes John the Baptist, Jesus' mentor, who preached hope in the form of the coming salvation of a judge warrior type God who would come to rescue the penitent and oppressed and slay the proud and the oppressor. John was a prophet who, like prophets before him, was calling Israelites to hope in this coming. God would come, he said, but you must be ready, baptized and expectant. Other writers in that second, or what we call the New Testament, like the passage from the late 1st century letter of James in our reading today, note that this wasn't written by James of Jerusalem, but sometime shortly after his death. And this passage picks up hope in a future judge God. It's tempting to formulate your faith when your life is full of suffering and injustice in such a way. You hope in a future you can't see. So returning to John the Baptist, Jesus' literal gestation and birth is, in the hands of the gospel storytellers, expanded to include the waiting time of Israel under colonization and the liberation from colonization by this judge warrior God. Rather than bringing light to enlighten the whole world, this God would bring flames to consume those deemed to be chaff. John the Baptist's message was obviously political, yet also with personal implications, as would be Jesus. For Jesus, you see, did not follow the theological path of his mentor. He didn't preach the judge warrior God. He didn't baptize people. He didn't tell people to wait for their salvation, political or personal, to come from a heavenly God with a heavenly army. Rather, Jesus preached a message that God was right here, right now. If only we had eyes to see. God is all around us, within us, among us, surprising us. God is in the joy of a peasant woman sweeping her floor and finding a lost coin. God is at the meal table with the tax collector. God is in the persistence of an aggrieved woman annoying a judge so much that he pay heeds to her case. Rather than God being an off-the-planet deity coming down with righteous zeal, God is a way that upends our expectations and is right here, right now. With those who know what it's like to be poor, who knows what it's like to be shunned, who know what it's like to be a pain in the neck to the authorities. God is in the little things and in the little people. God is also right here, right now, when we are together. Not necessarily when we're praying or fasting or being pious, but in the determination. Remember that story of a group of men lowering their injured friend through the roof? Or in the courage of the women disciples who won't be relegated to the margins, despite what some men try on. In the taking, breaking, blessing, and sharing of bread, wine, and fish by fellowships of Jesus' followers. God is in the ordinary, for it's in the ordinary that the extraordinary is present. So Jesus, the bread breaker's message, is also political, with personal implications. It's about noticing that God was not just in power and might, palaces and temples, but among the ordinary, the nuisances and the nobodies. And this God was not passive. For this God had an agenda of empowerment, transformation and justice starting from the bottom up. Not trickle down, but rising up. This message too got wrapped up into the Advent and then Christmas stories. It got written into Mary, it got written into shepherds and into a stable. It got written into foreigners from the east, a monarchical tyrant, and the fearful fleeing of the Holy Family as refugees. The baby Jesus as the adult Jesus would be light and hope, not just for Jewish people of the Jewish faith, but all people of any faith or none. That is to say, the wonder, the illumination of the divine in the ordinariness of life, in the little and the least, in the expendable and discarded, is not something that any faith or philosophy has a monopoly on. God is not in the pocket of anyone. Indeed, when a church puts God in their pocket, invariably God makes a hole in that pocket. As an aside, the theological descendants of John the Baptist, those Christian fundamentalists with their turn or burn, heaven or hell theology, do not define the orthodox middle of Protestantism. For the likes of Karl Barth, 1886 to 1962, he was a Swiss theologian. And more recently, David Bentley Hart, he was born 1965. He's an American Eastern Orthodox theologian. They take the verses in Colossians and Ephesians about God or Christ being through all and in all. They take those verses quite literally. Like the mystics before them, they're saying essentially there is nowhere where God is not. There's no person, no creature, no situation outside of the energy, flow, and grace of God. There is no chaff to be burnt. There is no sinner to scare. No candidates for hell. Hell is a redundant fantasy, which of course raises questions about evil, but that's a sermon for another time. So, given that the Advent themes of waiting and hope are in the Jesus frame of God's reign already among us, and not some future event, what spiritual disciplines does this season invite us into? What is the Advent spirit? And my answer, in short, it's a spirit of enough, of gratitude, and of gift. One of the things that spiritual teachers have long known about money and wealth is that it can be addictive. No matter how much or little we have, we can think we always need more. We need more to be happy, to care for our family, to share with others. And the desire for more can drive us to work harder, save harder, and store up what we have as an insurance against the day when we haven't. In criticizing this addiction, which is rampant in our society, I'm not despising money or wealth or work or savings. These things are tools, gifts, blessings. They can help us do things, go places, help people. When we haven't got them, life can be very restricted, and worry can fill our days. Yet when money becomes the goal, determinative of our happiness, I suspect we've forgotten the discipline and contentment of knowing when enough is enough, of knowing when we have enough, when our happiness is not reliant on our stuff, when what matters primarily is relational, friends, family, including our relationship with our own health and our environment, the planet. To use the analogy of food, the more we have, the more we consume, does not make us in the long term happier, but makes us overweight and unhealthy. We have to learn to say politely to ourselves, sometimes others, enough. And so it is with money. One of the ways to counter the addictive nature of wealth is by practicing gratitude. Sitting still and thinking of all the things we're grateful for, like life, like memories, like family and friends, like the smell of coffee, smell of roast meat, like the cleverness of the internet, like the flowers in the gardens, like the shape of a spoon, like having a meal together, like the crash of the waves, like the wonder of space and the magic of telescopes, like the smile of the shop assistant, like the joy of a dog, like the taste of blue cheese, and on and on and on. So many things if we stop and think. Another way of framing this practice of gratitude is looking for and seeing God in all things great and small. To quote William Henry Monk, not James Herriot, just saying. Seeing God in the ordinary, which is really extraordinary. Seeing God in the glimpses, the gestures, and in the graces we extend to and receive from each other every day. When we think about what we're grateful for, we will begin to notice more things we are grateful for. And we will, regardless of any articulation, begin to share this orientation of our life with others. Gratitude rubs off on others. Which leads me into the spirituality, the spirit of gift. This, like enough, gratitude, is firstly a way of seeing your life as a gift, not as something you deserve because you earned it, or that you are somehow better than others. Rather, just sitting and absorbing the miracle of your inception, your consciousness, your development into who you are today. Just sitting and realizing that despite whatever pain or hardships you've had, or losses you've suffered, your life has had and is maybe still having, or will have, many wonderful moments. And from that seeing of yourself as a gift, come to appreciate that you are a gift given to bring joy and hope to others. Indeed, that is our primary vocation as human beings. And it's not hard to do. A smile can do it. A gentle touch can do it. Flowers in a bucket at the front gate with a sign saying, "Take one," can do it. When we take a bit of our more than enough and share it, we are living into our vocation. We are being the hope and light of God to each other. This then is the message of Advent. We can be the hope we seek and the hope we share. We can be the light we need and the light others need. We can be where the domain of God is birthed and be midwives for others. Blessings to you.